A millionaire father sees a black bricklayer feeding his blind daughter and changes his life forever. Millionaire Robert Montgomery stood frozen, watching the scene unfold in the garden of his Connecticut mansion. A black bricklayer, his hands calloused and his clothes worn from work, was gently feeding his daughter, Charlotte, the same daughter he could barely look in the eye since the accident that left her blind 2 years ago. "There, little Lahi, just one more spoonful," Marcus Johnson said with a kindness that made Robert feel as if a knife were twisting in his chest. Charlotte laughed, a sound Robert had almost forgotten. At 8 years old, she hadn't smiled like that in her father's presence in a long time. The girl raised her hand, finding Marcus's face with surprising accuracy. "Tell me more about the colors in the garden, Marcus," she asked. "I want to see through your eyes." Robert recoiled into the shadows of the terrace, feeling a toxic mixture of shame and anger growing inside him. How could this man, who had known Charlotte for only 2 weeks, connect with her in a way that he, her own father, could no longer? Montgomery Construction was one of the largest companies in the country, specializing in luxury buildings that transformed the urban landscape. But Robert Montgomery couldn't build a bridge to his own daughter's heart. The accident had happened on an ordinary afternoon, a drunk driver, a blind curve, and Charlotte's life was changed forever. Robert had been behind the wheel. Physically, he had walked away unscathed. Emotionally, he was a wreck, drowning in work and guilt. Since then, Charlotte had been living under the care of well-paid nannies and nurses, while Robert hid away in the upper floors of his mansion or in his office in slightly smiling faced the city. The arrival of the garden renovation team, led by Marcus Johnson, should not have altered this dysfunctional dynamic. However, something was changing, and Robert didn't know how to deal with it. Mr. Montgomery, the voice of his housekeeper, Mrs. Peterson, interrupted his dark thoughts. "You have an important call from China about the Shanghai project." Robert nodded mechanically, casting one last glance at the garden before heading to his office. As he walked down the hallway, he paused in front of a framed photograph of his late wife, Eleanor. "You would have known what to do," he murmured. "You always knew." At that afternoon's meeting with investors, Robert was distant, his mind repeatedly returning to the scene in the garden. When he returned home, he found Mrs. Peterson waiting with a worried expression. "Sir, Charlotte's piano teacher called. She missed her 3rd lesson in a row." "What do you mean? Didn't the nurse take her?" Robert asked. "Charlotte refused to go, sir," the housekeeper hesitated. "She said she hates the piano now that she can't see the keys." Robert felt the weight of guilt grow even heavier. Eleanor had been a pianist, and Charlotte had always loved her lessons. That night, unable to sleep, Robert went down to the kitchen to get a glass of water. He was surprised to hear voices coming from the garden. Approaching the back door quietly, he saw Marcus sitting by the fountain with Charlotte, well after working hours. "My father doesn't love me anymore since I went blind," the girl said with a certainty that tore Robert's heart apart. "He can't even be in the same room with me." "Don't say that, little one," Marcus's voice was firm but gentle. "Sometimes adults don't know how to deal with pain, especially the pain of the people they love most." "Have you lost someone you loved?" Charlotte asked. A long silence followed before Marcus answered. "Yes, my daughter, Zoe. She was almost your age." Robert froze. Something in Marcus's voice, a deep, familiar pain, kept him rooted to the shadows. "What happened to her?" Charlotte asked. "She was sick. Leukemia. We fought for 3 years, but—" Marcus took a deep breath. "What I learned, Charlotte, is that the time we have with the people we love is too precious to waste on fear." Robert recoiled, silent as a shadow, his whole world crumbling as he realized the true nature of his behavior. It wasn't protection, it was cowardice. As he climbed the stairs back to his empty room, one question haunted him: what kind of man abandoned his own daughter in her hour of greatest need, while a stranger, who carried his own devastating pain, found the strength to offer her comfort? What Robert didn't know was that Marcus Johnson wasn't just a simple bricklayer with a kind heart. There was much more to his story than anyone in that mansion could have imagined. The truths that would emerge in the coming weeks would forever change the fate of everyone involved. If this story of guilt, redemption, and unlikely connections touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to the channel to find out how the meeting between these two men, broken by life but united by their love for the same child, will trigger a series of revelations that no one could have predicted. In the days that followed, Robert intensified his investigation into Marcus. He discreetly hired a specialized company, something routine in his business. "I want everything about him, especially about this daughter," he mentioned. He ordered the investigator over the phone, without taking his eyes off the monitor displaying the garden cameras. Through them, he watched Marcus and Charlotte. The bricklayers showed impressive patience, transforming the garden into a sensory space for the girl, teaching her to identify plants by touch and scent, describing colors with analogies she could understand. "This red is like the warmth of the sun on your face on a summer afternoon," Robert heard him explain as Charlotte touched a rose. The accuracy of that description haunted him. The report arrived in 3 days. Robert opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Marcus Johnson, 42 years old, graduated with honors in civil engineering. Married to Amelia Johnson, deceased, cancer. Father of Zoe Johnson, deceased, leukemia at age 7. After consecutive losses, he abandoned his promising career. A close source says he needed to do something with his hands to keep from going crazy. He started as a gardening assistant, eventually moving into construction. Robert walked away in a daze. Marcus wasn't just a bricklayer. He was an engineer who could have been managing entire projects. How could he smile after losing everything? That night, for the first time since the accident, Robert entered Charlotte's room while she was asleep. Hesitantly, he touched her hair, the first real contact in almost 2 years. The next morning, he did something surprising. He cancelled 3 important meetings and prepared a picnic. Charlotte came down for breakfast and found her father waiting. "I thought we could spend the day together in the garden, perhaps," he said. The shock on the girl's face was followed by a radiant smile. "Really, Dad? Aren't you too busy?" That innocent question destroyed him inside. The day was awkward at first. They sat near where Marcus was working. When the bricklayer appeared, he made a move to walk away. "Marcus," Charlotte called, recognizing his footsteps. "My dad is with me today. Come meet him." The 2 men exchanged a look laden with unspoken meanings. In the weeks that followed, a new routine established itself. Robert watched, trying to understand how someone who had lost so much could give so much. One particularly pleasant afternoon, he approached Marcus. "How do you do it?" he asked, the vulnerability exposed in his voice. "After everything, how can you be so present for my daughter when I, her own father, can barely look at her without choking on my guilt?" Marcus paused his work. "When Zoe was dying, she made me promise something. Daddy, promise you'll keep seeing the colors." I didn't understand it at the time. He looked at Charlotte, sitting near the fountain. "Your daughter is alive, Mr. Montgomery. She needs you to see her colors, not just your blindness." Those words hit Robert like a bolt of lightning. For 2 years, he had seen only the disability, not the vibrant child. The next day, something unexpected happened. In his office, Robert received an anonymous envelope. Inside was a medical file and a note: "You need to know the truth about the doctor who treated your daughter." The file contained serious allegations against Dr. Bennett, the neurologist who had declared Charlotte permanently blind. The doctor apparently had a history of hasty diagnoses and inappropriate treatments, quietly transferred between hospitals after lawsuits covered up by confidentiality agreements. Robert felt his blood run cold. What if Charlotte's blindness wasn't irreversible? What if there was a chance that Dr. Bennett had ignored? One name in the file caught his attention: Zoe Johnson, misdiagnosed with terminal leukemia. The envelope slipped from his hands. Connections began to form in his mind, a disturbing web linking Charlotte's accident, Zoe's death, and Marcus's presence in his life. Suddenly, the chance that had brought Marcus to his garden seemed far from coincidence. Could it be possible that this man, who had lost his daughter to the same doctor, was there for revenge? That night, as he drove home, Robert was torn between hope and fear. What did Marcus really want? Why get so close to Charlotte? And why send that file anonymously? The answers were closer than he realized, and they would reveal a dark conspiracy that would challenge everything he believed about loyalty, justice, and the true nature of revenge. The waning moon dimly lit Robert's office as he typed furiously, immersed in an investigation that had consumed his last 72 hours. Pages and pages of medical records, financial reports, and time-worn photographs covered the mahogany desk. In the center was a photo of Marcus with a little girl, his late daughter, Zoe. The same anomalies in the tests, the same neurologist, the same failed experimental treatment, Robert muttered, connecting the dots that formed a disturbing pattern. In the morning, Robert called an urgent meeting with his most trusted lawyers. "I want everything on Dr. Bennett. I want to know about every penny that has come in and out of his accounts for the last 10 years. I want to know who is protecting him," he ordered. As the lawyers left, Robert remained gazing out at the garden, where Charlotte was practicing identifying flowers by touch, guided by Marcus's quiet voice. Their closeness no longer bothered him. Now, it terrified him. "Sir, Marcus is on the line. He says he needs to speak with you urgently," his secretary announced. Marcus's voice sounded tense. "Mr. Montgomery, I need to cancel tomorrow's work. I have an important doctor's appointment for Charlotte." "Charlotte? Why would you be taking my daughter to the doctor?" Robert felt a chill run down his spine. A heavy silence filled the line. "I think we need to talk in person. Tonight, after Charlotte goes to bed." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Robert cancelled all his meetings and returned home to find Charlotte and Marcus in the garden, sharing stories as usual. Watching them, Robert could no longer distinguish innocence from manipulation. The intentions behind Marcus's kindness now seemed dark and threatening. When Charlotte finally fell asleep, Marcus was waiting in the office. Without preamble, he placed a folder on the table. "I believe you've already received similar information," the bricklayer began, his face a mask of contained emotion. "I was the one who sent the first envelope. I needed to know if you were alert enough to realize what's going on." "And what exactly is happening, Mr. Johnson?" Robert's voice was icy. Marcus opened the folder. "Dr. Bennett isn't just incompetent. He's a criminal. He's conducting unauthorized experiments, misdiagnosing patients to include them in his protocols. My Zoe didn't have leukemia. She had a treatable condition that was deliberately misdiagnosed. And Charlotte, your daughter, is not permanently blind. Her condition can be reversed with proper treatment." Marcus took a deep breath. "Mr. Montgomery, your daughter and mine were victims of the same man." The revelation hit Robert like a bolt of lightning. "Why didn't you go to the police?" "I tried," Marcus said, his bitter laughter echoing through the room. "Dr. Bennett is protected by powerful people. I have proof, but I need someone with enough resources to expose him." "So, you got close to my daughter to manipulate me," Robert accused, his anger rising. "No," Marcus's eyes flashed with intensity. "I sought employment here because I knew your daughter had been a patient of his. But I approached Charlotte because—" His voice faltered, "because she reminds me of my Zoe. And because no child should ever have to go through what our daughters did." Robert stared at the man before him, torn between distrust and hope. "I'm not asking you to trust me," Marcus continued. "I'm asking you to trust the evidence." He slid another folder across the table. "I got in touch with Dr. Elisa Winters, an expert in ocular neurology. She reviewed Charlotte's tests and confirmed it. There is a treatment, but we need to protect her from Dr. Bennett. He can't know we're investigating him." "Why not?" Because Charlotte isn't the only one. There are other children. And I believe Bennett is about to begin a new phase of his experiments. Marcus hesitated. A few years ago, I tried to confront him directly. A week later, Zoe had an unexpected complication. 2 days later, she was dead. The air seemed to freeze between the two men. The suspicion Marcus had just revealed was so monstrous it defied comprehension, a respected doctor deliberately harming patients to advance his research. I need you to take Charlotte to see Dr. Winters tomorrow, Marcus said. She's agreed to meet us discreetly. If we can confirm that Charlotte can regain her sight, we'll do more than that, Robert interrupted, a fierce determination lighting his eyes. If what you're saying is true, we'll destroy Bennett and everyone who protects him. The plan began to take shape as the night wore on. Robert would mobilize his resources, media contacts, private investigators, elite lawyers. Marcus would contribute his knowledge, meticulously gathered during years of solitary research, including the names of other affected families. The next day, under the guise of a family outing, Robert took Charlotte to Dr. Winters's discreet clinic. The examination was exhaustive, but it confirmed the unthinkable: Charlotte's blindness was reversible. The original diagnosis had been, at best, grossly incompetent, at worst, deliberately falsified. As they left the clinic, Robert held his daughter's hand with new determination. What had begun as suspicion had turned into a shared mission. Two fathers, a white billionaire and a black bricklayer, both shattered by the same evil force, were now united by a common goal: justice for their daughters and protection for the children who could still fall victim. What Dr. Bennett could not have imagined was that while he was quietly going about his luxurious medical routine, a merciless storm was brewing on the horizon, a storm that would leave no stone unturned in his carefully constructed empire of lies. The courtroom was deathly silent as Dr. Bennett was led out in handcuffs. His empire of lies had collapsed in a matter of hours, exposed by the unlikely alliance between Robert Montgomery and Marcus Johnson. "This is just the beginning," announced the prosecutor. "Investigations have already identified more than 40 children affected by Drive Bennett's fraudulent diagnoses." As they left the courthouse, reporters surrounded Robert and Marcus. Charlotte, holding both of their hands tightly, wore a serene smile. Her eyes, once empty, now followed the movements around her with increasing precision. "Mr. Montgomery, how did you discover the fraud?" asked a reporter. "The truth finds unexpected paths," Robert replied, exchanging a meaningful glance with Marcus. "Sometimes, we have to lose everything to see what really matters." 3 months later, in a discreet ceremony, the Zoe Foundation opened its doors. The treatment center, built in record time with Robert's resources, was already treating 15 children misdiagnosed by Bennett. "We didn't just want justice," Marcus explained during the inauguration. "We wanted to turn that pain into something that could save other families." Dr. Winters, now the Foundation's medical director, had adapted Bennett's experimental protocol. Ironically, his research could have saved countless lives, including Zoe's, if it weren't for greed. Charlotte, whose vision was improving weekly, became the face of the Foundation. Her story inspired families to seek second medical opinions and question seemingly definitive diagnoses. Meanwhile, Bennett's financial empire crumbled. Hospitals associated with him faced million-dollar lawsuits. Colleagues who had covered up his practices were indicted. The system that had protected his negligence for so many years was now turning against him. Robert, transformed by the experience, completely reorganized his priorities. Montgomery Construction, once focused exclusively on profit, now allocated 30% of its projects to children's hospitals and medical research centers. "Charlotte taught me that our eyes can be open, but we still don't see what matters," he confessed in a rare interview. On a particularly meaningful afternoon, while Charlotte played with other children in the Foundation's garden, Robert found Marcus watching the scene with tears in his eyes. "Zoe would be 11 today," the former bricklayer remarked. Robert nodded silently. After a moment, he asked, "Do you think we did her justice?" Marcus watched the children playing. Justice is different from revenge. Revenge would have been to destroy Bennett and stop there. Justice is ensuring that his evil is not repeated. You know what haunts me the most? Robert continued. If it weren't for you, I would never have discovered the truth. I would have spent the rest of my life away from my own daughter, believing that her condition was irreversible. And if it weren't for you, Marcus replied, I would never have been able to expose Bennett. My voice alone didn't have the necessary reach. That week, a special child arrived at the foundation, Emma Wilson, 7 years old, diagnosed with the same condition as Charlotte. Her parents, unable to afford private treatment, had lost hope until they saw a report about the Zoe Foundation. You can always tell when a child regains their sight, explained Dr. Winters, watching Emma during her first consultation. There's a moment when their eyes begin to follow the world, and then, suddenly, they light up with recognition. A year after Bennett's trial, the garden of the Zoe Foundation witnessed a special celebration. Charlotte, now nearly fully sighted, blew out the candles on her birthday cake. At her side, Emma and other recovered children applauded. Robert, watching the scene, realized that his own blindness had been cured as much as Charlotte's. Before Marcus came into his life, he had merely existed, accumulating wealth, losing human connections, hiding behind walls of privilege. There is a blindness worse than physical blindness, he confided to Marcus. It is the blindness of those who see only money, status, and power. On the main wall of the foundation, a simple plaque displayed a powerful message. In memory of Zoe Johnson, who taught us to see beyond appearances. And so, from a shared tragedy, an unlikely partnership was born that transformed lives and redefined the meaning of family, proving that the strongest bonds are not necessarily those of blood, but those forged by compassion, shared purpose, and the understanding that our differences are insignificant in the face of the values that unite us. If this story of justice and redemption touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us that sometimes we have to lose everything to find what really matters.